Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to Lima Relationship Vibes. If you're new here, my name is Lima, and this podcast is where we sit down and talk about the real side of relationships. Not the social media version, not the filtered version, but the real stories that many people experience happens quietly behind closed doors. Sometimes these stories are joyful, sometimes they are painful, and sometimes they teach us lessons. Today's story is one that many African couples quietly struggle with but rarely talk about openly. It is the story of a marriage that slowly began to feel like it had three people living inside it.
That's fascinating. Tell me more.
A husband, a wife, and a child.
Yes.
It was transformative. And a mother who never truly stepped out of her son's life. Let's begin. The kind of woman Ziva was. Ziva was not the kind of woman who rushed into relationships. She grew up in Benin City in a household where marriage was respected deeply. Her parents were not rich, but they had something many people admired: stability. Her father worked as a civil engineer for the state government. Her mother ran a small tailoring shop from the front of their house. Their marriage was not perfect, but there was respect in the home. Arguments happened, of course, but Ziva always noticed something important.
Her parents argued privately. That's a valuable lesson.
They solved issues together, and when decisions were made, it always felt like both of them were part of the conversation. That environment shaped how Ziva saw marriage. To her, marriage meant partnership, not competition, not control, just partnership. By the time she finished university and began working in Port Harcourt,
She had one quite open heart. She wants a man who respects her.
marriage is like a team.
I agree, it's about partnership.
The first time she met Raylan, tell us about that.
Ziva met Raylan during a professional training workshop for young engineers.
She was working in project administration at the time, and the company sent her to attend a 5-day seminar. Raylan was quiet, not the loud type, not the kind of man trying to impress everyone in the room. He listened more than he spoke. During lunch breaks, he usually sat near the woman reading notes from the workshop. That calmness was what first caught Ziva's attention. On the third day of the training, we ended up sitting next to each other during a group exercise. The conversation started naturally about work and career goals and life in Port
I
Harcourt.
see.
And then family. When Raylan talked about his family, his voice softened slightly. He spoke about his mother with deep respect. He told Ziva how his mother raised 3 children after his father died, how she worked 2 jobs, how she refused to let hardship destroy her family. To Ziva, that story sounded admirable. A man who respected his mother so deeply must surely value women. At least, that was what she believed.
That's a very interesting perspective.
The relationship begins. Their friendship continued after the training ended. Occasional phone calls turned into regular conversations. Weekend coffee meetings slowly became a routine. Raylan was thoughtful. He remembered small details. If Ziva mentioned liking a particular snack, he would show up the next week with it. If she mentioned a stressful day at work, he would call in the evening just to ask if she was feeling better. Within a year, both of them began discussing the possibility of marriage. And everything about it felt natural. Their values aligned. Their goals were similar. Their families approved. By the time Raylan proposed, Ziva felt confident she was stepping into something stable. She had no idea that the biggest challenge in her future marriage would not come from her husband's personality. It would come from a relationship that existed long before she entered his life. The first visit to his family. When Ziva visited Raylan's hometown for the first time, she was nervous. Meeting your future in-laws is always a delicate moment. His mother, Mareka, welcomed her warmly. She was a dignified woman, calm voice, observant eyes. During dinner, she asked many questions. Ziva's upbringing, education, and work led her here. But I think Ziva left feeling relieved. She told a friend later that week, "I think his family is very peaceful." What Ziva didn't notice yet was how closely Raylan watched his mother's reactions during every conversation. Every time Mareka nodded in approval, Raylan seemed relaxed. But when she remained silent, he looked slightly uneasy. It was a subtle detail, one that would only make sense much later. Their wedding took place in Port Harcourt. It was not overly extravagant, but it was beautiful. Friends and family gathered from different cities. The ceremony was filled with laughter, dancing, and the usual joyful chaos that comes with Nigerian weddings.
During the vows, Ziva felt certain she was
Beginning a new chapter of life, a chapter built on partnership. And for the first few weeks after the wedding, everything seemed perfect. They decorated their new apartment together. They cooked meals together. They stayed up late talking about travel plans and future children. It felt like the beginning of something wonderful. But sometimes the early days of marriage are like the calm surface of a river. You don't always see the currents moving underneath. The first small comparison. The first moment that felt slightly strange happened during a simple dinner. Ziva had prepared stew with rice. Ralen tasted it and smiled. But then he casually said, "My mom usually adds scent to stew like this." The comment was harmless. "My mom folds clothes in a particular way. My mom organizes the kitchen differently." None of the comments were insults. But together, they created a quiet feeling that Ziva couldn't fully explain. It felt as if another invisible standard existed in the house, and she was slowly being measured against it. The daily phone calls. Ralen spoke to his mother every day. At first, Ziva admired the closeness. Many people wished they had strong relationships with their parents. But gradually, the calls became longer. Morning calls, evening calls, weekend calls that stretched past an hour. One afternoon, Ziva overheard something that unusual. Ralen was describing a disagreement the two of them had earlier that day. Word for word, detail for detail. It made Ziva uncomfortable. A question, why did their private conversations need an outside audience? The first argument about it. The topic finally came up one evening. Ziva mentioned gently that some arguments should probably stay between the two of them. Ralen looked surprised. He said he was simply seeking advice from someone he trusted. And that person happened to be his mother. To him, it was normal. To Ziva, it felt different.
marriage in her mind was supposed to be a protected space. That's a powerful insight.
A place where two people solved problems together. That night, they ended the conversation peacefully.
But the issue was not actually resolved.
It had only been paused. The visit that changed everything. 3 months into the marriage, Mareka came to stay with them for 2 weeks. Ziva prepared carefully for the visit. She wanted a good relationship with her mother-in-law. The first few days were pleasant. But then Ziva noticed something subtle. Ralen behaved differently when his mother was around, more cautious, more eager to please. Sometimes when Mareka corrected something Ziva did in the kitchen, Alan stayed silent. Even when the correction felt unnecessary. It wasn't hostility. It was something else. It felt like loyalty pulling him in 2 directions. The first moment of real discomfort, the moment that truly unsettled Ziva, happened during breakfast one morning. Mareka commented that the way Ziva organized the kitchen cabinets was not very efficient. Before Ziva could respond, Ryan stood up and started rearranging the shelves. Without asking, without discussing it. As if his mother's opinion was the final instruction. Ziva stood there quietly watching. And for the first time since the wedding, a strange thought crossed her mind. What if this marriage didn't actually belong to 2 people? What if someone else had always been part of it?
And this is just the beginning of the marriage, and his mother already acting this way.
I hope his actions doesn't make him lose his wife. That's a valid concern.
You can already feel the tension building.
Exactly.
And that's the thing about many relationship problems. They don't explode suddenly. They grow slowly. The silence after the visit. When Mareka finally left after the 2-week visit, the house became quiet again. But it wasn't the same kind of quiet.
I know exactly what you mean. That quiet has a different weight to it. You mentioned a silence that felt heavy. Tell us more.
I wish I had known before. You know that kind of silence that sits in a room after something uncomfortable has happened, but no one wants to talk about it?
Had known before. This quiet carried a strange heaviness. You know that kind of silence that sits in a room after something uncomfortable has happened, but no one wants to talk about it? For a few days, Ziva tried to shake off the feeling. She told herself she was overthinking things. After all, it was normal for a son to... She respected his mother. But certain images kept replaying in her mind. The way Ralen quickly rearranged the kitchen shelves, the way he immediately defended his mother's suggestions, the way he seemed almost anxious to prove he agreed with her. It wasn't that Ziva expected him to... She expected something else. Balance, partnership, a feeling that they stood on the same side of decisions. But when he opposed his mother, it challenged the partnership she had envisioned. Instead, she was starting to feel like a guest in a house that had already been designed long before she arrived.
A pattern begins to form.
Over the next few weeks, something else started happening. Whenever Ziva and Rowland had a disagreement, even small ones, Ziva would later notice something unusual. Rowland's tone would suddenly change. For example, one evening they had a small argument about weekend plans. Ziva wanted them to attend a friend's birthday gathering. Raylan preferred to stay home because he had work early the next day. The conversation ended normally. They agreed to skip the party. But later that night, while preparing for bed, Raylan suddenly said something that caught Ziva off guard. "My mom thinks sometimes social gatherings are unnecessary distractions." Ziva turned slowly and looked at him. She hadn't told his mother about the disagreement, which meant Raylan had, again, and this time the advice from outside the marriage had returned as a conclusion inside it. That was the moment Ziva began noticing the pattern clearly. Arguments, phone call, advice, decision.
That clear pattern, it all connects. It does.
It was like an invisible loop. Ziva's first honest question. One night while they were sitting on the balcony after dinner, Ziva decided to speak honestly. She kept her voice calm. "Can I ask you something?"
Rowland nodded.
"Do you usually discuss our disagreements with your mom?"
Rowland hesitated for a moment. Then he answered perspective.
The honesty was refreshing, but the answer still stung.
The honesty was refreshing.
Ziva looked out at the streetlights below and asked another question. "Do you think maybe some things should stay between us?" Rowland sighed softly. "I'm not betraying you. I'm just asking someone wiser for guidance."
The conversation ended without anger, but inside Ziva's heart, something unsettled had begun to grow.
What Ziva did not fully understand yet was the weight of Raylan's childhood. When Raylan was 13 years old, his father died suddenly from a heart condition. The loss shook the entire family, but it affected Rowland in a particular way. As the oldest son, he felt an invisible responsibility fall onto his shoulders overnight. During those early years, she worked multiple jobs to keep the children in school.
That's dedication.
But emotionally, she leaned heavily on Raylan. He became the one she confided in,
A strong bond.
the one she discussed family problems with, the one she relied on for support. Over time, their relationship became extremely close, almost like partners navigating life together. For Mareka, Rowland was the son who never failed her. For Raylan, Mareka was the person who had sacrificed everything for him. Neither of them realized that this deep bond would later create complications. His marriage. The financial surprise. 6 months into the marriage, Ziva discovered something unexpected.
What happened?
One evening, she was reviewing their household budget. They had agreed to maintain transparency about finances, but while looking through recent transactions, Ziva noticed several large transfers she did not recognize. When she asked Raylan about them, he told they were for family matters.
Helping family was normal.
But the amounts were significant.
And what troubled her was not the support itself.
It was the fact that she had not been part of the conversation.
When she gently asked why he hadn't discussed it with her first, Rowland responded without hesitation.
My mom advised that it was important to need. The words hung in the air. And suddenly the financial decision didn't feel like something her husband had made with her. It felt like something decided elsewhere. The first real argument. That night, the conversation turned into their first serious argument since the wedding. Ziva tried to explain that marriage required joint financial decisions. Raylan insisted that supporting family was a responsibility he could not ignore.
Neither of them was wrong.
But the deeper issue wasn't the money.
Ziva was a fellow Slutis.
And that changed everything. Rowland felt questioned. The argument ended with both of them frustrated and emotionally tired. For the first time, they went to sleep without saying goodnight. Advice from friends. The next weekend, Ziva met a close friend for lunch. During the conversation, she carefully described what had been happening.
And then said,
"What is wrong with you? Respecting parents is good, but marriage needs its own space."
The words stayed with Ziva long after the lunch ended.
Because deep down, she knew the problem wasn't about choosing between a mother and a wife. The problem was about boundaries. And right now, those boundaries seemed unclear.
Another visit from Mareka.
A few months later, Mareka announced she would visit again.
This time the visit was longer.
3 weeks. Ziva tried to remain positive.
But something about the announcement.
During the visit, the same patterns from before began appearing again. Comments about household routines, suggestions about finances, opinions about how the couple should.
What is wrong with you?
It made her uneasy.
I see.
They planned their future together. None of it was aggressive, but the influence was constant, like water slowly dripping on stone.
At that constant muscle tuft, that question reveals a lot.
One evening during the visit, the three of them were discussing future plans.
Ziva mentioned that she hoped to pursue a professional certification the following year.
It would require additional study time and possibly a temporary reduction in working hours. Before Roland could respond, Marika spoke first.
That might distract from family responsibilities.
Ziva waited for Roland to defend her ambition, but instead he nodded thoughtfully. Maybe it's something we should postpone.
Ziva felt the disappointment immediately.
Not because he disagreed with her. Ziva began to explain, but the disagreement had already been decided.
But because the disagreement had been decided before she even had a chance to finish explaining,
The quiet realization. The house was silent.
I can imagine that quiet
Streetlights glowed faintly through the curtains.
setting.
And for the first time, she allowed herself to face a thought she had been having true. The problem was different than she originally believed. Not betrayal, not lack of love, but loyalty divided in ways that made partnership difficult.
Quest, what are your thoughts on that?
And unless something changed, that quiet tension would continue growing.
I wonder what shifted to break that tension. Exactly. The change was subtle but pivotal.
So Ziva felt she had no control over her home.
I feel for Ziva not having control over her home. These are some of the things that change women.
Exactly, a still Jeff's situation. The conversation Ziva could no longer avoid. The next morning, Ziva woke up with a strange calmness. Sometimes when a person has carried a heavy thought for too long, there comes a moment when the mind simply decides, enough. That evening after dinner, she asked Rowland if they could talk privately. Her voice wasn't angry. It was steady. Rowland, I need to say something honestly. I feel like there are 3 people in this marriage.
What do you mean?
Ziva looked directly at him. I respect your mother. I truly do. But when every major decision we make is influenced by her opinion, it stops feeling like our marriage. The words landed softly, but heavily. For a moment, Raylan didn't respond. Because deep inside, he knew there was truth in what she was saying. That night, Raylan barely slept. He sat quietly in the living room long after everyone had gone to bed. Ziva's words echoed in his mind. 3 people in this marriage. It sounded harsh, but it also forced him to confront something he had never questioned before. For most of his life, his mother's voice had guided his decisions. Her sacrifices had shaped his loyalty, but marriage was different. Marriage required building something new. And for the first time, Raylan realized that the lines between honoring his mother and protecting his marriage had become blurred. Marika notices the distance. Over the next few days, Marika sensed a change in the atmosphere of the house. Rowland seemed quieter, more thoughtful. And one afternoon, she asked him directly, "Is something troubling you?" Rowland hesitated. Then he finally spoke honestly. "Mom, Ziva feels like our decisions are not really ours." Marika's face changed slightly. At first, she looked surprised, then defensive. "I only advise you because I care about you." "I know," Rowland replied gently, "but maybe some decisions should belong to the 2 of us alone." For the first time, Marika felt a small sting. She hadn't expected. Not rejection, but realization. The honest table talk. A few evenings later, something unexpected happened. Marika asked both Rowland and Ziva to sit with her. The 3 of them sat around the dining table. The room was quiet. Then Marika spoke. "When your father died, Raylan became my support. For years, I relied on him for everything. And maybe I never learned when to let go." Ziva listened quietly. There was no bitterness in Marika's voice now. Only reflection. "I never wanted to interfere in your marriage," she continued. "But perhaps my presence has been heavier than I realized." Ziva felt a surprising wave of emotion, because this conversation was not unfolding the way she had feared. "I don't want distance between you and your son. That bond is important, but marriage also needs room to grow." Felt lighter, a new understanding. The next morning, Marika packed her bags earlier than planned. "You're leaving today." Marika smiled softly. "Yes, I think it's time you two enjoy your home again." Before leaving, she hugged Ziva warmly and whispered something simple but meaningful. "Take care of my son, but also take care of your marriage." That sentence carried a quiet blessing. After Marika left, the house felt different, not empty. In the following weeks, Ziva and Raylan began practicing something new. Whenever a decision came up, financial, personal, or future plans, we discussed it first between ourselves. Sometimes we still sought advice, but the advice came after our own conversation, not before it. Slowly, our partnership began to, not perfectly, But honestly, and that brings us to the end of Ziva and Raylan's story. What makes this story powerful is that nobody here was truly a villain. A mother who loved her son, a husband trying to honor his family, a wife hoping to build a strong marriage.
I think many people listening can relate to this. The issue of family influence in marriage is very real. Parents should learn to keep their distance and not to interfere.
Yet even love can create tension when boundaries are unclear. The lesson in this story is simple but important. Marriage is not about choosing between family and spouse. It's about creating a new center where two people grow together while still respecting those who raised them. And sometimes the hardest part of love is learning when to hold on and when to step back.
This story teaches us a lot, especially to the men. Learn how to draw the line between your marriage and family.
And that's why conversations like this matter. Because sometimes a story helps us see our own lives a little more clearly. Thank you for joining us today on the Stories Connect Us, Inspire Us, and Show Us Who We Can Be. Embrace them fully. Keep learning, keep loving, and keep growing.